Is there a USB?
There's on the side.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this meeting of the Stayton City Council. It is Monday, the 4th of November in 2019, and we'll call the meeting to order. And would all of you that are so inclined join me in a flag salute? I'm going to try to stand up if I can. Go ahead and start.
I pledge allegiance to the
Flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yep. I think I'm right on this, but republic is from the Latin res publica, whatever that means. That's what we've got. Anyone else know it?
I don't.
Okay, I'm good on that one. Start bringing some Latin to each meeting, kind of class this up a little bit. Okay, announcements, additions to the agenda, declarations of ex parte contact, conflicts of interest, bias? Yes? No? No. Okay. No appointments this evening. Public comments. Anyone need to address the council? This is the time. There's a 3-minute slot for anyone. I guess I get my Boy Scout up here tonight. Just an introduction would be fine. And thank you.
Hi, my name is Karen Lang. I'm secretary actually for Troop 50's committee, and this is my stepson Connor Moore, who is going to tell them what you do for the troop. He is the scribe currently actually for Troop 50.
Okay, thank you. And welcome. Thank you. Okay, any other public comments tonight at this point?
To get my brand.
We all started out life shy of microphones, and then some of us got over it, and then some of us didn't. Anyone else? Okay, here we go. Consent agenda for tonight, October 21st, 2019 City Council minutes. What would you folks like to do with that?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Make a motion to pass the consent agenda. Consent agenda as presented.
All right.
I'm not sure what I'm seconding to, but
Yeah,
A motion and maybe a second?
Yeah, second.
A motion and a second to approve the consent agenda as presented. Looking at that, would all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Nothing. 4-0 approved. And our first item this evening, there's no public hearings under general business. A CIS, Cities Insurance Services, is that right?
City County.
City County.
Is that what that stands for?
City County.
Yeah. City County.
City County. Oh, CCIS.
Well, that's what it should be, but they dropped the one C.
I got it. I got to reading some of this stuff this week in our packet, and started to get kind of familiar with acronyms. Lots and lots of them in one of these reports. That's fine though. CIS Best Practices Review of the Stayton Police Department, and it's informational, and the staff report, Chief Ty Hanlon. Chief?
Thank you, Council and Mayor. As you have before you, I sent a memo just about why we asked City Council Insurance Services to come. They've done it before, and at my request, I asked Dave Nelson, a risk management consultant with CIS, to come in and do a best practices review. As a result of that, he came in on October 8th and completed that review, and he is here tonight to give the findings of that.
So, Mr. Chapman.
Mayor, members of the council, thank you, Chief Hanlon. Mayor, I'm Dave Nelson, and so the Public Safety Risk Management Officer for CIS. And a brief background on CIS is that we're the insurance provider for the city. We're an insurance pool. We are only We only serve cities and counties in the state of Oregon. We're a public organization like all of you, and we provide insurance on the city side to every city in the state except for 4. Those is 4, Portland, Salem, Eugene, and Medford. Those are self-insured. And then of the 36 counties, we insure 28 of those as well. And so when I talk about insurance on that, it's liability coverage, and that's really what we have. Other lines of coverage, medical and work comp. But the general liabilities, when I say we insure those cities and counties, is what we have. So I've been with CIS for almost 10 years. I have a law enforcement background, a city manager's background with the city of Troutdale. I served as an elected official as a city councilor for the city of Sandy a number of years ago. So thank you for your service. I've been there as well. But I just want to take a few minutes and walk through the report, and then certainly answer any questions you all may have. If you look at the very first, kind of the first page of the report, it just gives you a quick overview of a little bit about the insurance and the amounts that you folks pay and the lines of coverages that you have. And it just gives you a quick overview of that. It also states towards the bottom of that page who was present during the on-site assessment, and that was both Chief Hanlon and Deputy Chief. Is that the right title? Dave, I always get his last name wrong. Friesendahl. I got it right. All right. And then Kurt Chapman, who also works with for CIS, who focuses on human resources, was also with me during the assessment. On the next page, where all the charts and the graphs are, just want to spend a second on that. This gives you the claim history, and so what we're really focusing on, and what I focus on from the public safety side, is a 5-year look back. So this talks about the law enforcement claim history going back to the fiscal year 14-15 up to the current time. And you can see during that last 5 years, when you look at the totals kind of in the middle of the page, there were just over $145,000 in claims from the law enforcement, the police department, in the last 5 years. And really there was one large claim in 2017-18, and if you were to remove that, it looks really, really good. And even with that claim, it looks really, really good. You only have a 40% average on law enforcement claims. So really, the police department's been doing very, very well from a claim perspective the last 5 years. I'd be happy if you have any questions on this page. Yes, sir.
Under coverage, what is AL?
AL is auto liability.
Okay, what's APD?
Auto physical damage.
Okay.
So auto liability is if we hit somebody and there's a third party. Auto physical damage means you're really running into an object. Could be a parked car, could be a rock, could be a light pole. Okay. In my old police department, we had one of our officers ran into another one of our police cars, so we damaged 2 cars in that accident. So auto physical damage is
what's GL?
General liability.
General liability. And the last one, we might as well do all 4 of them. What's WC?
Work comp.
Work comp, okay. Okay, thank you.
You bet. Any questions on the claims the last 5 years from the police department? We can't get into the specifics of the claims, but at least the dollar values of them, frequency. Okay?
Well, yeah, well,
okay.
Might as well. 76% of the claims by accident type excessive force. Is there a trend in that? I mean, is it?
No, I think that was one claim, if I remember correctly.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Which was the higher claim. That if I said if we would remove that one particular claim, I think, you know, look really good. But it was just one claim. Okay.
That's just here?
Yes, sir.
That's not anywhere else or around the state?
It's just the city.
It's just here?
Yeah.
Okay. Phew. Okay. Thank you. Go ahead.
You bet. So I'm not going to read the whole report to you. I mean, but just in summary, what we've done is we've created these best practice reviews, I went through them when I was police chief in Troutdale many years ago, and what it is, it's looking at recommendations that we take from a variety of sources. We take them from the state statutes, administrative rules, general law enforcement best practices we find throughout the state and the country. We look at work comp, we look at OSHA, we pull all those things in, as well as DPSST. We come in and there's probably a couple hundred questions that we go through, and we're looking at everything from risk, we're looking at claims management, we're looking at general liability, we're looking at policies, training, equipment, the facility, the hiring practices, and so we really just kind of get into everything from the beginning to the end. I did this review back in May of 2014 at the request of Mr. Campbell when he first came in as city administrator. There were some issues at that time with the property and evidence, and those issues had been addressed. We went through the property and evidence this last month, in October of last month. The property and evidence room is in really, really good condition, still being well maintained. The issues that were from several years ago have not resurfaced, so those are that's very reassuring. Again, it's we do these best practices kind of on a schedule, but also at the request of individuals. So we were requested by Mr. Campbell initially, and then by Chief Hanlon when he took over in the interim to come in and take a look at the police department. So it's a welcomed and appreciated that someone's actually calling and having us come in and take a look at the police department. I go into all the different facilities and all the different areas that we look into, and really what I want to kind of just get to the summary of it, and then we can get into any of the specifics or any of the meat and potatoes if you like. But on the second to last page where we talk about the summary of recommendations, these are recommendations that we found that are kind of things that the police department should work on, and they are they're not mandatory. We don't have the authority to come in and say thou shalt do all of these things. They're simply recommendations and some guidelines that the new chief, whomever that's going to be, would come in and say, well, here's some things I could work on and continue to move the police department forward. Some of these are outside the police department's ability and maybe under currently financial obligations of the city. They may not have the money to do things like securing the parking lot. That was a recommendation we made back in 14. Again, looking at it this year, is there a way to fence that area in to protect the vehicles, protect the property a little bit more? That may not be on financially something the city can do. It's just a recommendation. We talked about looking at adding some additional video cameras on the exterior of the building with at least a 30-day retention. In a perfect world where we have video cameras, we really like to have, you're not going to like this, but about a 2-year retention, just because that's the statute of limitations that someone can file federal claims against the city, and so if we would like to have a 2-year retention, that's not really practical. So if there's a particular event or an incident, certainly download that, record, and save it to a hard drive or a disk or something. So at least a 30-day retention is what we would be recommending on any kind of additional security cameras. We did this assessment in the daytime, so I don't know what the light, I mean I could drive by there tonight, but looking at the lighting in the parking area in the evening, like tonight, to see what the lighting exposure is, if it's safe for staff, visitors to be traveling to, so that they can see anything that's coming if there's a threat out there. One particular area of concern, I'm on the very last page, as when we were doing the tour of the facility, we went up into the server room. That was particularly hot. And we did it last month, early October, so it wasn't like we're in the middle of the summer, and the server room was pretty warm. So that was a concern, which I highlighted in the report. There's some general, some maintenance and cleaning up that we recommended. We did recommend continuing the single use of the cell that is in the intoxilizer room. If you've been in the police department, you may know that there were kind of 2 cells in that area. One back in, I think it was 2010, There was a suicide that occurred there, and we suggested to the chief at that time that they no longer use that cell. That cell's not being used, and we just want to highlight that we can only use the holding cell that's in the intoxilizer room itself. Continue to address some of the clutter issues. We do recommend doing a full audit, and I know that you're in transition right now, a full audit of the evidence room. So anytime there's a change of a chief or a sheriff in our world, or an evidence and property technician, we really ask that they go in and do a complete audit of that evidence room to show what's there, what the new chief is taking responsibility for, and moving forward. So I think the interim leadership is addressing that, and then is trying to time that when the new chief is appointed. Some of the dead zones on the radios and the officers, or when they're out in the field, those have been notified and those have been communicated to your dispatch center. So those are some areas of concern, but are being addressed. We spoke about the hiring process and just talked a little bit about that, specifically when to do a conditional offer of employment versus, and we just really recommended moving that from after background to before background, and so we discussed that, and we think that's what's going to be the change in that practice. The same hiring process for reserve officers as full-time officers, ensuring that they go to some kind of a reserve academy. Continue the performance review process. Looked at doing some DMV checks, not only at the time of hire, but on an annual basis, not only for the police department, but anyone in the city that drives city vehicles. Talked about doing some NIMS, that's National Incident Management System training, making sure all the officers are trained, well, not just officers, I should say officers, but also city staff, that it has a responsibility in an emergency situation to make sure they have the adequate training in NIMS. We talked about some general training for supervisors, some ADA stuff. A lot of that stuff CIS provides. It's free training that they can take when they're available, including some personal investigations, reasonable suspicions, harassment, that kind of stuff. We spoke about a little bit about interagency teams. If the police department starts moving to joining interagency teams, what that looks like, and conducting both audits of high-risk events, reports, making sure that they're at the time of those occur, and also on an annual basis looking for kind of trends. Is there a lot of use of force going on by one particular officer that you may not capture? If it occurs in January and then again in March and then April, May, August, you may not catch it on an individual basis, but if you look at it on an annual basis, you may start seeing some trends. So we spoke about that. Doing some updates and reviewing of the emergency management and continuity of operations plans, and then updating the lexical policy manual, which has been an ongoing process, and the deputy chief's been working on that, and that's a lengthy process. So normally what we would do is make specific recommendations to who this would be attached to, whether it's the chief or a lieutenant or a sergeant. And then perhaps provide some general timelines. I didn't do that for this because you guys are in transition. So I don't know who the chief's going to be, what the command structure is going to look like, what the timeline's going to be. So I left all of that out in this particular report. Usually you would see specific individuals identified and some timelines. But because you're in transition, I thought I would leave that to the incoming chief and the city manager to address what they see fit. So. Other than some of the recommendations that we pointed out here, which is really nothing major, other than getting the policies updated, and those are always of concern. There's nothing really glaring that we noticed. And so there's some general recommendations, but that's really all they are. I would look at it as more of just a tightening of the belt a little bit. It's nothing that's drastic. There's been departments I've gone into that have had over 80 separate recommendations, and so you guys are looking really well. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions that any of you have.
Well, I'm going to start.
Okay.
Last one was done in 2014. How often should we do these?
Usually about every 5 years, 3 to 5 years. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dig into, for me, one of those evenings maybe, dig into this thing of when to offer an
Conditional
employment
offer.
contract. Before the testing, before...
So the conditional offer of employment, so if you're hiring a police officer who goes through the application, the written test, the physical agility test, usually an oral board of some kind.
Okay.
Then they would, a lot of departments were moving to the background,
Okay.
which is a very intense and in-depth investigation on that individual.
Okay.
Then they would offer the conditional offer of employment if the candidate would pass the physical, the medical exam, and the psychological exam.
Okay.
Several years ago, we went to and spoke with the Background Association that's kind of a spin-off of the Oregon Peace Officers Association.
Mm-hmm.
They're recommending moving that conditional offer before you start the background because of some of the information that you could receive in the background process could be related to health issues, work comp issues. It could be considered privileged information and protected information, and so it's better to have the conditional offer before the background because some of that information could be health related and protected. So just for putting the city in a better position, it's better to have that condition prior to the background.
Okay.
And we spent probably 15-20 minutes talking about that with your command staff.
And they agree, city manager agrees. Yeah, we just went through it's been a year or better ago of revamping how we wanted to hire police officers.
Yeah, there's nothing illegal about it. Well, I shouldn't say there isn't anything illegal, but there potentially could be something illegal if the information is gained in the background investigation and a decision is made, an applicant could make a claim that you didn't hire them because of a prior injury or a prior medical claim or a prior work comp claim. So if you have a kind of a layer of protection, it just protects the city from a claim.
Okay, all right, I'm done. You guys,
Mr. Mayor,
go ahead, please.
I have a follow-up question on that. So what does it change when you do the background afterwards? Because you could still find something in the background check that makes you not want to hire that police officer, and they could still make a claim saying that it was because of something else.
They certainly, yeah, you're right. They certainly could make a claim, but what you're doing is you're giving them, I'm going to give you an offer, a conditional offer of employment if you pass the background examination, the psychological and the medical exam. If you do not pass that, and we don't have to give all that information to the applicant. So having that kind of a firewall, if you will, it just protects the city a little bit better.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I have one other question.
Another one?
Yeah, it says that the city, that they didn't have harassment training. I thought that we do harassment training because I had to do a training.
We have.
Okay.
Tamara did it 2 years ago. We recorded it, and everybody, I think, in the city gets a chance to watch that. But I think what you're referring to is about every 2 years we need to update it.
Yes, sir.
And so it's time for us to have Tamara back out. Tamara Jones is a CIS attorney.
She's a pre-law
attorney.
Well, she got promoted.
She did.
Deputy General Counsel now. So.
So maybe not Tamara now, but we had a CIS representative come out. We film it and then show it to all of our employees.
Oh, great. And,
yeah, and so but it's been 2 years since we've done that. So I think
so we have several employees. One of Tamara's employees, Sharon Harris, does some of that training as well. Kurt Chapman, who was with us on site, he does that as well. So we have several that can do it. And it is recommended to do it every couple of years.
Is this a final document, or can that be like noted in there that we have done harassment training, but it just needs to be updated? Because it comes off that we just don't do harassment training.
It is a final, but what we do is we come in and we kind of update it through a risk plan, so we can certainly update that. And one of the documents on the firearms, the range, Deputy Chief has already provided that MOU to me, which is under review. So some of these things are already being addressed, and we can certainly provide updates to that.
Okay. And if you guys update, there's a couple of typos in your report as well. Under property and evidence, it says there's a new coming into the police department soon. It should say chief. And then under interagency teams, it says somewhat unusually for law enforcement. It should just say somewhat unusual.
Where are you at, ma'am? The second one you just mentioned.
The second one I mentioned is the third to last page at the top. Wait, sorry. Yes, third to last page at the bottom under interagency teams, the second line.
Okay. And harassment was done 2 years ago by Tamara.
Thank you.
You bet.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
On the point that Councilor Hook just addressed, conduct a full audit of the property and evidence prior to or just after the appointment of the new police chief. I guess my question would be for Keith, Ty, and Dave. Is this achievable prior to the appointment of a new police chief? Okay. And why do we conduct that? Just as a curiosity point here.
It's kind of it's a good time to go in and address what has been, what is in the evidence and property evidence room at the time a new chief is taking over, or if there's a change in property evidence technician. Who is responsible for it at that time? So anything that's missing, right, would fall under the previous administration, previous property evidence technician. It would not fall under new. So it's just it's a good protection for the incoming chief to say, when I took over, all these items were here, and when I left, all these items are still here, or have been appropriately processed out. So it's a good line in the sand for the incoming administration to know what they're responsible for.
Thank you.
Just to follow up on that, we held off on it because of our new RMS, our records management system, and that whole process, because we're going to go to labels, and so everything's going to be labeled. We're going to actually physically touch every piece of evidence in there, and obviously guns, money, and drugs are our highest liability in an evidence room, so it's critical that we do it.
Good, thank you.
I think you said you guys are moving to a barcoding system.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah, just something real quick. I just need some clarification when we use the word audits, that it might mean different things to different people. Because it seems like there's a requirement in the first section to do some kind of audit, and I would assume you're referring to like an independent audit from an outside party, or are you referring to an internal audit?
For the property and evidence?
Yeah, well, for policy, high-risk events such as force risk, etc. You're talking
so, yeah, I'll break
internal audits.
Yeah, so I'll break it down in two ways, sir. The property and evidence can be conducted, depends on this availability of staff. You would want somebody that is not attached to it. So you don't want the property and evidence technician doing the audit of the full audit of the evidence room. In some jurisdictions, they will ask a neighboring law enforcement agency to come in and do it, and so it's an independent third party doing it. On the property and evidence, I'm not sure if they're doing it because they're changing it, moving it to a barcoding system. If they're doing it all internally, that's fine. Having somebody that's not on a day-to-day basis that's handling property and evidence is ideal. Or having a third party come in and do it that's not related to Stayton PD. On the other audit recommendation, on the use of force reports, pursuit reports, deployment of taser would be considered a use of force, but those kind of events, the command team should be doing those audits on a regular basis. So they should be doing it at the time that use of force is used, that report's written, they review the report from the sergeant into whatever the ranking is going to be. Ultimately, they make any decisions based off that particular incident. But then going at the end of the year, looking back and pulling all of those reports out at one time, just looking for any kind of specific trends. Some of them that what we're pointing out is it one officer that's doing it? is you have one officer that is getting into all your pursuits, as an example, or one officer using use of force all the time. Maybe those are justified depending on the shift he or she's on, but also maybe not. And so looking back and taking a year look at it and review is a good practice to get into. Just auditing, reviewing, analyzing all of those high-risk areas at one time.
That's fine. I was just curious if we're talking internal, external, versus the assessment.
Yeah, it depends. Yeah, the reviews on the use of force, certainly internally. The property evidence, it can be done by an external person if there's not enough staff to do it, or in some very small departments that we work with, they don't have anybody else, so they call in another jurisdiction. So it kind of depends on that one.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, thank you.
All right, well, thank you very much for your time and your questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay. All right. Let's see. The next thing is annual sidewalk maintenance program presentation by our Public Works Director.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This year, we have the distinct pleasure of having one of my engineers present this to you. Ian Kent Stormo actually has been running this program for me for the last 2 years, and he has the most knowledge about this program. So I've asked him tonight to come and share with you about this year's program and a little bit about last year's program, how it came out, and give you some data on that. So, Ian Kent Stormo, you're up.
Thank you. So I've been managing the sidewalk maintenance program for the past 2 years now. Learned a lot, got a lot done last year, hoping to get even more done this year based on what happened last year. So let's just get right into it here. So a brief history of sidewalk maintenance in Stayton. Prior to 2012, it was strictly complaint driven. Somebody would complain, inspector would go out, verify there was a hazard, and then go through the process of individually enforcing the code, basically. They ran into some problems with that because they'd show up, they'd see the problem, of course, at the one property, and then didn't have to look far to notice the exact same problem, you know, with their neighbor's sidewalk that didn't get complained about. So in 2012, they decided to implement a sidewalk maintenance program. The program was successful in 2012, 13, and 13, 14. You can see the areas that were part of the program then. There was a couple of years where we didn't do the program as management changed, and then we brought it back last year. We did about $21,000 in repairs last year for through the city. All of this is coming from this section of the code. It explains that planter strip, curb, sidewalk, that's the responsibility of the property owner to maintain and keep safe. And here's a list of the criteria of what sidewalk risks, or basically our code pointing out hazards. What I see a lot of out there are gap separations of more than 1/2 inch, vertical displacements of over 1/4 inch. I see a lot of spalling, or in the middle of the sidewalk will be about a 1/2 inch or so dip. And then there's, of course, other things, but those are for the most part what I see out there today. As far as how we compare to other cities, it's very similar. Albany's a little bit different. They have a 5/8 inch, for example, where we do 1/2 inch for a horizontal separation. And you can see at the bottom the ADA requirements. We are a little bit more strict than the ADA, but I think that's good. Get ahead of some of this stuff. As you can see, most cities it is the responsibility of the homeowner to do the repairs. Of all these cities that we talked to, Brookings was the only one where the city says it's their responsibility, and according to them, it's a huge liability and they have no way to fund it. So nothing's really getting done there. Their sidewalks are falling apart. Some of our current sidewalk problems. So a lot of the sidewalks in town are old. I mean, I have a list here of some of the subdivisions, and even some of our newer ones like Sylvan Springs, the first phase of that was built in 1999, so they're already 20 years old. They're starting to get to the end of their design life, which is around 25 years. Typically, you can expect about 25 years for concrete. A lot of the sidewalks in the older subdivisions were constructed with kind of what was ever available. They didn't put down a section of base rock to give a good foundation, and they're all really falling apart. Other things such as tree species, you can see in West Town a lot of big trees that were planted in the planter strip are not only harming the sidewalks, but sometimes in the streets in some cases. And all these problems expose the city and the homeowner to liability. If somebody were to trip and fall, they have a case. As we let things go, the values of our neighborhoods and stuff deteriorate. And in 2015 there was a survey, and let's see, the participants ranked sidewalks 4th out of 12 for what our priority should be for repairs and such for the city. Here are some examples of what I found last year. On the left is gap separation. You can see that's just a control joint that is starting to spall and break apart. That's difficult for people in wheelchairs, people with strollers, little kids on their Razor scooters. It's a big hazard. On the right, you can see where a tree has pushed one panel up. That looks like it's well over an inch, so in that case, we'd have to remove and replace that concrete. Entire panels or pieces smaller than 1 square foot are out of code and are getting worse and worse every year, so we require people to replace those. The grade, the trees aren't necessarily always creating this lip of a trip hazard, but they're tipping the sidewalk so bad that people in wheelchairs, they can't get through there. And then handicap ramps, as far as those go, we have decided to do those for the most part because they're expensive and it takes some expertise to kind of inspect and manage those. So we haven't put those on any homeowners since I've been doing this project. On the left, you can see the spalling. That's in the middle of a panel. Giant pieces of rocks are just falling apart, falling out of there. To the right, you can see more spalling, but there's also a pole in the way. So for that case, it's tough. Sometimes we can add some sidewalk to the other side of the pole if the pole is closer to the curb and give people about 4 feet to get around it. But some goals of the program, one, to improve the infrastructure, and like I said, a lot of our older sidewalks weren't built correctly as far as what our standards are today. So part of what we're doing is making sure that they're getting the base rock in, they're using high strength standard concrete, that not just mixing it at home with whatever loose rock that they've got left over from some other project. Goal 2 is to provide safe travel way for those with and without disabilities. I mean, you see people these days with their cell phones in their hands a lot, just walking along. I'm guilty of it. I've almost tripped. I've had to save myself a couple times. Little kids in scooters, stuff like that. It's not only wheelchairs, but wheelchairs is definitely a big part of it. And then goal 3, to ensure the sidewalks are maintained, which part of what I'm doing, I think, is kind of educating homeowners about what their responsibilities are and some methods they can use to maintain their sidewalks and make sure that when panels are popped up, they know what to do. Here's some sidewalk that was repaired, I believe, in the 2013 project. On the left, that is over by Jet Auto. On the right, there it is, right off of our city parking there on 4th and Florence. Last year, a homeowner decided to take a stab at trip hazard grinding himself. He did a really good job. And some other homeowners decided for the spalling joints and the excessive cracks to repair them using epoxies. That seemed to work pretty well. Some overall project tasks. We've developed a citywide grid. It's based off of the tax maps. Roughly, we try and see how many sections we can handle a year. This year we're trying to do 4. Last year we did 2, but we only had about $21,000 of repairs done through the city, so we're taking on a couple more this year and see how it goes. We go out, we inspect or inventory what we've got per neighborhood and mark anything that's out of compliance. Then we go ahead and send out letters and knock on doors and notify the property owners of their sidewalks. Just tell them what their options are. We give them a date. This year, our first notice went out in September, and they don't have to have their repairs done until the end of June of 2020. So we trying to give them as much heads up as possible. And then if people are struggling financially, we have some money set aside that we can use, and they can set up a payment plan and get stuff done. So that's helped people quite a bit. Here you can see where last year we did 10 BB and 10 BA. So between those two, we had about $21,000 worth of repairs done through the city. So this year we're doing 10 BC, BD, CA, and CB, hoping that we get a little bit closer to our budget, which is $50,000. So far, I think we'll be able to do all 4. A lot of people are going to go ahead and take it on themselves, so I'm confident we can do all 4 this year. If not, we will split it up and do whichever 2 next year. So options for property owners. Property owners can do the work themselves if they want. They can use epoxy filler or trip hazard grinding instead of full-on removal and replacement in some cases, as long as it satisfies the code requirements. Permits are required when they remove and replace, so we can go out there and make sure that they're building it to our standards with all the base rock and all the other requirements. And I'm pretty much the city inspector who can set up meetings and meet with them on site and give them some advice on what to do in certain situations. The property owners can hire a contractor, which the contractor's expected to do the same thing. Any removal replacement is they're required to get a permit. If a homeowner is not getting more than, or if a homeowner is getting more than just one panel replaced, it's typically cheaper for them to go through a contractor directly. And they can authorize us to do the repairs and bill the property owner. We'll put together a contract and put it out to bid here in March or so, and the contractor will just go and do panels here and there, and typically takes them about a month, but that's for people who can't do it themselves or typically only have like one panel and they don't want to deal with going through a contractor and stuff. They'd rather just have us do it. If we make the repairs, we bundle the work, put it out to bid. We manage and inspect all the work. The homeowners are not required to get a permit, even for removal and replacement in that case. All the work is guaranteed to meet our city standards. We're right there with the contractor the whole time, making sure it's getting done right. We are able to finance the project and then bill the property owner, and if they need us to, we can split up into a payment plan. Last year, people arranged for about 3 equal payments typically, so. And let's see. Oop. Here's a good overview of last year. So last year, 86 property owners were sent notice of damaged sidewalks. We sent notices out almost monthly, you can see there, and if we weren't able to get a hold of them through letters or door hangers, we started calling people and getting verification of their ownership and where to send letters and all that. 44 people had repairs completed through the city contractor at an average cost of $480. 42 completed their own repairs. 8 hired contractors and 34 did their own work. The original contract, including all of the work for all 86 property owners, was $72,000 or so. We gave those quotes, we broke it up and notified each property owner, and in the end, only about $21,000 of that 72 went through the city. And as of October's utility billing, 2,500 and some change has yet to be received from property owners. A lot of them are just still making their payments. For this year, we sent out our initial letters on September 9th. I've been inspecting, I'm still working on it for the past month and a half or so. Our budget, like I said earlier, is $50,000. I've met with somewhere between 5 and 10 property owners to talk to them about their options and what I think is best for them to do. And I think everybody, except for maybe one person, said that they're going to go ahead and do the work themselves or hire their own contractor. And that's that. If you guys have any questions.
Would you go back to that kind of a map of the city with the often little blocks of there? Whoa.
Yep.
Find Washington Street with your pointer.
Washington is right here. It's the squiggly one.
Oh, okay. Now find 3rd.
All right.
North and south.
3rd is somewhere in this area.
Okay. So we're not going to do anything with 10B and 10DB and 10DA. These older sections of town with basically broken streets. We're not going to do anything with them for a while, are we? Maybe not a fair question, but it just...
Yeah, I'll answer that.
Where to start on these?
We're just rotating, Mr. Mayor, annually. So they started, I believe, maybe Dan can help me on this, in 2012. I believe they started on Water Street, and they did 1st Avenue to, what was it? It was at 1st to 4th.
I got it up here somewhere.
And from Water to Washington. So they did that. And then the following year, they went north to Fern Ridge Road. So we're just rotating annually based on what we have budgeted. And this year just happens to be going south from what we did last year.
Okay. No, that's good. We need to get our young, and everybody's young compared to me, but get this young man on one of my miniature Teslas and get out on the sidewalks, and you get a keen appreciation for how good some of them are and how and some need some work. That it's not bad. I don't know how long my little Tesla is going to last on the streets. It should be okay on a lot of the sidewalks, but closer I get to home, the tougher the streets are. Maybe that's just me. Anyone else? Good presentation, thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Ian is a local product as well. Were you born and raised here in Stayton, Ian?
I lived my entire life either in Stayton or Sublimity. I went to Sublimity Middle School. I started at St. Mary's, then went to Regis for high school.
Okay.
I worked at the cannery many summers. I mean.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, well, that's, yeah, we're not going to hold that against you for all of that. Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Anything?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor.
Too late. Maybe not. I don't know. Apparently he's leaving.
Lance can
so
probably answer it.
You better jump in if you're going to get a question in.
Yeah, so I was curious about, with the past projects that you've done and the people that have like hired contractors on their own or done the repairs themselves or gone through the city, can people in these new areas that are going to have the sidewalks done this year, can they come and like talk to Public Works and say, hey, who have other people used, or how much did someone pay the city for a sidewalk of my, similar size? Can they get that information so they can kind of decide if it's worth it to hire their own contractor versus just have the city do it or do it themselves?
Yeah. And we don't really make any recommendations, but we do have a list of people who are licensed to do concrete work, and we can give that list to people and they can call individually and get their own quotes, kind of price. And then what I usually do, well, what I've done this year at least, is I took last year's prices, I bumped them up a little bit. They typically go up about 10%, and I give them a ballpark of what we think it would be to go through the city.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was my question. Yeah, good. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Huh? Russ, was this where you...
I'd like to ask a few questions.
Did you want to ask him of Ty?
You can go up to the microphone, and if I can't answer, if Ian can't answer them, I'll answer them.
Sounds good.
There is public comment on these things.
Got a handout for you.
Oh, I need a handout. There we go.
I've got plenty you don't want.
Okay.
Not your job.
Sure, thank you.
So my name's Russ Strohmeyer, 325 West Washington Street, also owner of Stroh's Photography for over 40 years at 319 West Washington Street, own the 2 rentals on either side. So I'm being impacted by this greatly right now. And this, what I just passed out to you, would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. Those photographs you're looking at are the city's property. They're not my property. I took those today. The one that's perhaps the most funny, if you walk out this door right here and take a step, before you even do that, there's a gap. I mean, it's like this. Right out this door to these chambers, the city's property. All those pictures are on the city's property. The asphalt is all around the park here, around the swimming pool. Huge hazards. And it's been that way for a long time. And so I guess I'm asking, is this a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing? Or, I expect the city to lead by example and take care of things that they can take care of before nitpicking the property owners of Stayton. I mean, I think it's kind of ridiculous myself. I mean, that you're doing this and putting the burden on the property owners when we could walk right out this door and see examples of what you're asking us to do, and the city's not doing it. And this is just on this property. I haven't even gone and checked the other city properties. And I would invite all of you to come walk the sidewalk in front of my properties on Washington Street and tell me there's a hazard there. There are no hazards. But you know what? I got the letters and I added these costs up, And just for my 4 properties, if I went by the estimates, I would pay $9,000 to make repairs at my property. I mean, this is on the sidewalk. I say there's one panel that I should replace, and I could probably get that done for $250. How many other people, business owners, or not just business owners, but property owners, are being impacted negatively by this code? I mean, and we're talking 1/2-inch gaps. You know, I've seen brand new concrete pours where the expansion joints are more than 1/2-inch gap. I mean, it's ridiculous. What about if we're talking public spaces too? Let's go take a walk across the Jordan Bridge. That's a public walkway. The gaps on those boards in the Jordan Bridge, they don't meet code. What about the new Leatherfoot Bridge? What about the other walkways around the park that aren't paved? Those are much more of a hazard than, and I'm not just talking my sidewalk. You know, I'm looking at all these other sidewalks that are marked too, and there are some hazards, granted, but I'm not about to pay $9,000 for my sidewalks that aren't a hazard except for maybe that one panel, and I do agree that it needs to be repaired. But again, I've got 2 issues. One is the fact that the city isn't even taking care of what should be done according to your own code, and the other is the nitpickiness that is going out to all of the property owners. I mean, the way this code is written, it's ridiculous. It really is. And, you know, what I would like to see is a temporary halt to the implementation of this, and I would really like to see the code revisited. Sure, these other cities do this, but we didn't elect you to follow along and do what other cities do. I mean, take a look at that code seriously. It is so nitpicky that it's ridiculous.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Russ. Okay. All right. Anyone else have anything to say in response to either the report or Okay, let's go on.
Comment?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I have a question. That's why I'm trying to wait for the public to comment. So, okay, cool. So I had a question, basically how the grid square is selected. What weighs into that for you guys, just as far as budgetary constraints?
Budget plays part of it as far as how much area we can cover, because we can only manage so much. It takes a lot of time to put all this together. And then as far as I know, it has also something to do with how close they are to schools. That's where we're starting, and we're working our way out. That's as far as I understand it.
Yeah. Okay, well, understanding, you know, something like this takes a long time, when do you think the entire city will be able to be inspected and, you know, up to code, sidewalk-wise, in our current progression? And Lance, this may be a question for you, I don't know.
Well, that's a very good question. I'd have to count the squares, I think, and divide by 2.
There you go.
Probably as simple as that, to be quite honest. I would like to point out that this isn't a problem that just started under my administration or Ian. Right. This has been a problem like our streets that have been going on for 50 years. All right.
Yep.
What I will say is, I think it was within the first month I was here that we had that survey, and that survey said, and I understand Russ's concerns, but that survey, I don't know if you filled that survey out, Russ, but that survey identified as sidewalks being the 4th most important infrastructure we have in this city. Mm-hmm. And I recall 2 council members that had folks that were in wheelchairs that wanted those sidewalks fixed at that time. That is why we're doing what we're doing. And so, I couldn't give you the answer how long it's going to take to fix them all.
Right. No, I was just thinking more of an estimation, Lance. I was curious about that.
Again, I'd have to count the squares. It's really as simple as that.
Okay. Great. I understand the concept and why we're doing what we're doing. That's not what I'm asking you. So, yeah.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So I want to say 2 things. First is, it's really important for us to have sidewalks that people can get around on, whether they are fully able-bodied or differently abled. So working on these sidewalks is very important, and I fully support this program. I think it's great. I also am hearing that, you know, $9,000, that's a lot of money. When you think about the average household income here in Stayton being around $50,000 for a family, that's a significant chunk of money. So my question, I guess, is there a way that we can figure out which of these sidewalks are going to take, you know, like a sliding scale of how much it's going to take for it to, how much money it's going to cost for it to be fixed, and then give them more time to get it repaired based on a certain bracket of cost. So instead of just like, you know, 9 months or 10 months, they're given, you know, 2 years to get it done, or we can go out and figure out who's coming up in the next 5 years and start giving them notices now saying these are the things that are going to be coming up in your, you know, when you're making your 5-year plan.
What I will say is this, is that I like that idea, and I think we're already doing that. We had a program done in 2012, and I think they just, one or two of the folks just got done paying this last year. So it was a 5-year process. As long as there's continual payments being made in progress, I don't think we have a problem. That's why we budget $50,000 a year for sidewalk replacement. That's not for us, the city, to go out and spend $50,000. That's to leverage our money and let people finance those sidewalk repairs. Now, we'll get that back. It might be a year. It might be, as Ian said, it's taken 3 months, and we're down to $2,500 out of the $20,000 that we lent out. So I don't really see a problem with that. We don't have a hard, fast policy with that right now. What Ian has been telling these folks is that contact the finance department and set up a payment schedule. It's really that's it. We understand, you know, it's a lot of money for a lot of folks. And so as long as they call and they make some sort of payment arrangements, I'm fine with it.
Awesome. So if someone had like a $10,000 bill, it doesn't matter what their, they don't have to like go through some type of records thing of show me how much income you make. There's no like. No.
We
Okay.
don't
So they
ask
could
any
all.
of that.
Okay. Awesome.
We don't.
Okay.
Maybe we should, I don't know. We just, you know, this is, again, we just started this program 2 years ago. We're learning as we go what works, what doesn't work, for not only the city, but for the homeowner. I can't say that I wouldn't be sitting there where Russ is if it was my house and I got a $9,000 bill. What we can do is we can try to make processes and develop programs that help people like Russ to get that done. However, you know, again, the code is the code, and we're here to follow it. If the council would like us to change that code, we can sit down and do that as well.
Got it. Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
So, Lance, if someone has a dispute, if they say, this is what you think is an issue, I disagree, can they get a second opinion, and is that something they bring that forward towards you, or forward for you to look at, and is it something that you can talk about? I mean, obviously you have those guidelines, but if they come up with a second opinion, is that something that
These are really things that you get second opinions about, really. I mean, it's a measurement, it's quantitative. You know, you can go out there and you can quantify everything. A half inch is a half inch is a half inch, a slope is a slope is a slope. You're not really gonna, you know, if it's that close, I'm guessing Ian wouldn't have written it down.
Okay.
It's really not something that you can go in and talk. Ian is called out all the time after the letters go out, and he goes over what is wrong and what needs to be replaced and why. I'm not sure if he's talked to Russ or not, but he does a pretty darn good job of doing that with the homeowners. And as of last year, we didn't have any complaints at all regarding this program. No, we didn't have $9,000 bills either, but we didn't have any. Most people were all for it. In fact, I've had several people come into my office, and I wasn't even a part of it on a day-to-day basis, thanking us for giving them an opportunity to hire contractors so they could get it done, because these older folks, some of them don't know how to do it. And they were thankful that we contacted them to allow them to use our contractor, and we would administer everything. So there's the other side of that as well.
Mr. Mayor, follow up.
Okay, one, real quick.
So,
Please.
in terms of, so I guess, like you said, and half an inch is half an inch, but if the estimate that they're given is for a replacement of a panel, but a contractor comes in and says, well, we could, there's another way that we could take care of this.
We're open to any kind of discussions like that. I mean, I've got a number of years doing this as well, Ian as well. I mean, we're open to dialogue with anybody.
Okay. Thank you.
Good. Thank you. Good one. Questions from the audience. Steve?
Steve Poison, 1750 East Pine Street. I understand the idea of rotating the squares gives a certain amount of fairness to who's being looked at, but another way to do that seems to be starting with the worst sidewalks in town and getting those taken care of, because there's certainly some of the pictures that Ian showed where there's little pieces of sidewalk. Seems like those might be the ones that you would want to have addressed first.
I'll answer that because I've been doing this for a long time, and those are the sidewalks that need to be done in a capital project, because I'm not going to go to a homeowner that doesn't have any sidewalks or just fragments of sidewalk and expect them to do 60 feet of sidewalk when the sidewalk's been in disrepair for 25 years. That's one of those streets that you're talking about. The whole street needs to be rebuilt.
Right.
And I'm not going to ask a homeowner to build a half a street. That's a capital project, and that's where we'll take care of that.
So where do you draw that line between the $9,000 that one property owner...
You saw the pictures. You were just talking about Ian's pictures. That's where we draw the line. I mean, when there's chunks missing throughout the full lineage of their lot, we're probably not going to have somebody replace that. I have not seen Russ's sidewalk and what he's referring to, so I'm not going to speak to that.
Sure.
I just don't know what it is.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Steve? Russ?
Can I reply to a couple things?
You may, of course.
I feel like my comments earlier fell on deaf ears. Nothing was said about when the city is going to follow through on doing what you're requiring us to do.
We have been doing that, and it's on a rotational basis. If we go down to Sylvan Springs, we had the same kind of pathways down there in that park last summer. We took care of those. This next summer will be Pioneer Park here. But we only have so many funds, so...
As do we.
Well, I understand you, but I don't have a program where I can go out and borrow money and have it done. I have to work with what I have. And I hope you understand that. I just don't have the money to do all the parks and all the issues that we have at one time.
It's just, you got to understand, it's a hard pill for us to swallow when I have, and I would really, really invite Lance or any of you to come look at my sidewalks and tell me where they're a hazard. Other than that one panel that Ian pointed out to me that should be replaced, there is absolutely no hazard walking up and down my sidewalk. And that's, again, where I know that's what the code says, but I think that code needs to be revisited. And I do agree with this gentleman that, I mean, there are pieces of sidewalks, and not the whole street, but pieces of sidewalks that I've seen around town where the concrete is lifting that's a terrible hazard. You know, why not target those first, the real hazards? And again, please come and look at my sidewalk and tell me where it's a hazard.
Yes, okay, we'll come look at it. I'll leave it, I'm just going to leave it at that. I mean, we're looking at these things on behalf of the ADA folks. It's not a matter of you, able-bodied Russ, walking down the sidewalk, and it might not be a hazard to you. Someone that's in a wheelchair, someone that's in a walker, maybe that's a hazard. And that's what we have to look at. You referred to the quantitative analysis of other cities there. If you looked at the bottom, it was the ADA requirements. Not much different, really. And that's the Americans Disability Act, which go around the city to city looking for...
So the Did the ADA come up with those guidelines
Yes, they did.
of a half-inch gap?
Yes, they did.
So what about, my question about the new concrete pours, where their expansion joints are more than a half an inch?
I can't, I have never, haven't witnessed that, so if you could point those out, I can come look at them.
Okay,
It wasn't something the city did, I can assure you that.
all right.
Mr. Mayor, is this maybe a conversation that can happen?
In Lance's office?
Yeah, in Lance's office. further
It could, but I
discussion?
wanted the council to hear this too, because again, I was told when I went down that talk to my elected officials, and so that's why I wanted you to hear this too. Okay?
Thank you for
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Generally, we welcome these long exchanges, so yeah, we'll go with it. Anything else on this subject tonight? Judy, please.
Judy Money, 2110 East Pine Street. I like the concept of what the city is trying to do to help people and in the payment. I'm just trying to think in my brain other ways maybe. This could be way off in the wrong direction, but maybe there could be maybe a grant written or have financial banks or things like that offer low interest rates for the homeowner to be able to do something. I know some people don't like to buy, get loans in addition to what the city's doing. I don't know if that's anything feasible, but just trying to think of other ways too. But I like the idea that they're not being pressed to have to pay for that, that they can work out a payment plan.
As a matter of fact, our local grant that we had last year, the folks at Sylvan Springs did a patch of asphalt pathway for the grant. You have to request it though and apply for it.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Anything else on this one tonight?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember Ian saying something about Stayton maybe having a stricter code of some kind than the ADA when we were looking at the different cities. It was one of your slides, and I'm curious about what we do that's stricter, and maybe there should be something that we do look at this code and see if it's necessary, if it really falls under the ADA requirement, or I just remember him saying something about it. It was one of the lists that we had for the cities where it had like Albany with 5/8 inch.
Lance, you have to start the show.
Oh, what's that?
Yeah, hit the.
Yeah. I'll go back to that real quick, Counselor, and we can look at that. Oh, come on.
This wouldn't be all that social media stuff that's going around about we're the only ones that require all these things and all these other cities don't. It turns out there's only one that doesn't. That wouldn't be part of that, would it, Counselor?
No, no. It just there was a slide up here that, and I'm just curious about it. I don't know what you're talking about, but
I'll get it to you.
Social media.
One moment.
I know what social media is, but I don't know what the conversation is.
Let me do it. Oh my gosh. I apologize here.
There you go.
Let's see if I can go down here.
Haven't we had some beautiful days for late October, November?
There it is right there. So you can see a number of cities there. Panels, maximum gap separation in the horizontal Stayton's at 1/2 inch. The ADA is at 1 inch. You can see going down there that they just vary. Stayton's at 1/4 inch for vertical separation, as is Silverton. Albany's at 1/2 inch. Corvallis is 1 inch. Tualatin's 1/4 inch. ADA is a 1/2 inch. I mean, you can see the differences if you'd like to look at those. I'm trying to see the one there. Panels, broken pieces. You can see ours is much easier, 1 square foot, where ADA is 2 inch by 2 inch square. So that would require a complete panel replacement if you had this much sidewalk missing a crack. So it's a little both. And those are the ADA requirements that are federally mandated.
Mr. Mayor? Lance, do you have an idea of if we just went by the ADA standards?
No.
Okay.
I don't have any.
You know what I was going to say?
Well, I think I know where you're going.
I'm just, just as a devil's advocate, if we're just going by the ADA standards,
We'd have to go out and look at all the sidewalks again.
with a different lens, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else?
Are we done with this? Okay, again, thank you. Audience is good.
Mr. Mayor, I
Council is
do have one more question.
One more.
Yes. So, Lance, it was brought up by a member of the audience, Russ, with these pictures and whatnot, and so I just want to reiterate and just make sure that I understand that we as well are taking sections of city property and working on maintaining those as well.
Yes, we are.
Okay. And you said that this area that is of concern.
And each time we do a street or a paving project, every sidewalk or handicap ramp that's on that street, as in Regis Street, we just went and replaced all the handicap ramps, and every sidewalk section that needed to be done, we took care of. Last year it was Virginia Street, the year before it was Marion Street, the year before it was Washington Street. We do that on an annual basis. But again, we only have so many funds. As far as the parks and the pathways, it comes from a different fund. Our parks fund is very minimal because it comes right out of the general fund. We don't have a separate fund that funds that. It's a general fund. And so our budget for parks improvements, way, way down. We'd like to increase that. We could probably get more pathways done anyway.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, here we go. Thank you all on that one. Let's go to resolution number 996, supporting and authorizing the City of Stayton to apply for a feasibility study grant from the Oregon Water Resources Department. And Lance, on you again.
Number 2, yes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tonight, I bring before you resolution number 996, Oregon Water Resources Department Water Project Feasibility Study Grant. A little background about this. The city receives its water from the North Santiam River via the Power Canal located on 3rd and Water Street. The city has one workable shallow well. It's completely dependent on the water level of the North Santiam River. We have one intertie with the city of Salem. The North Santiam River water is the city's only source of water. During our City Council management retreat in 2019, the City Council set a short-term goal for the city to search for a secondary water source. Is this working now? Oh my God.
What you do?
There we go. Is it working here now? All right.
This is the...
There we go. Excuse me. All right. September 2019, the Public Works Department entered into a contract with a consultant team of Keller Associates and GSI Water Solutions to help find an alternate source of water. The study criteria that we gave them: minimum flow of 1,000 gallons per minute, which is 1.4 million gallons per day. It needed to be within a 3-mile radius of the city, and no direct connection to the North Santiam River. The point of this whole exercise is to try to find a secondary source of water that's completely independent of the North Santiam River. The findings of this was Mill Creek Watershed was within 3 miles, and available water rights from December through May, meaning that we could pull water out of Mill Creek potentially between the months of December through May. It's a tributary to the Willamette, and there's no North Santiam connection. No storage reservations are pending, and no in-stream flow requirements are shown. Mill Creek was the only watershed meeting the criteria listed above, meaning within 3 miles, potential of 1,000 gallons per minute, and independent of the North Santiam River. The groundwater source that we have within the city consists of the quaternary alluvial deposits, direct heights, but these deposits are located along the river, and they have a direct hydraulic connection to the river, so we can't look at that. We can't pull water from there. The fluvial sediments have a low water yield of 60 gallons per minute, so it's not a good idea to invest money in looking in that. The basalts of the Columbia River Basin Group, the water yields in Stayton area are around 100 to 400 gallons per minute, but there are other wells in the Willamette Valley that are in the same deposit that have yields from 500 to 1,000 gallons per minute. Water rights availability. The OWRD defined two areas of the CRVG aquifers as groundwater limited areas, meaning that we couldn't put a well in there and just pull water directly out. And that consists of basically Sublimity and Stayton, the cities of, and the areas directly west and directly east. So those areas you can't just go in and put a well in, and the WD would not give you a license to do that. There is a trough of the Columbia River Basalt Group located outside the GLA. It has potential for a deep well. It would need approval from the Oregon Water Resources Department, but their staff is non-committal to whether or not they would approve that. And if approved, it would certainly be heavily conditioned for a long-time source. So if we found a place that is outside the limited, groundwater limited area, and we found a place for a deep well, chances are the WRD would put limits on that. So if the water levels in the groundwater rose to a certain level, they would restrict it or completely keep us from taking any more water out of it. So it's very uncertain how long that would last. So that's not something that we probably want to entertain. What we looked at next is something called Aquifer Storage and Recovery. It's an ARSR system. What this does is you store excess water either from the water treatment plant, or if we were to come up with a well or something or draw water directly from Mill Creek during the winter months, we eject that into the aquifer, into the ground, 400 or 500 feet deep, into the voids between the basalt, and we just keep injecting water into that. What that allows us to do is draw water out during times of need in the summertime, or if the river goes bad because of a chemical spill, or if we have algae in our river and we can't use that water source, we would be able to use the ASR and draw water from that. And again, we're looking for a source that has the ability to draw 1.4 million gallons a day, which is about 800, I had written down earlier. It's a lot more than we have now, which is 0. And we would still have to be in rationing periods at that point, but our city would survive. We could go on with our city, 1.4 million gallons a day. The water recovery can be used for a municipality supply as well, working with the OWRD. And we could site one of these ASRs next to an existing system, perhaps down by the water treatment plant or the wastewater treatment plant, so we could use our existing system to provide a conduit for this water and to get it into our system. Based on the preliminary research discussed in the report, the ASR seems to be the most feasible and adoptable secondary water source option for the city. We've looked at groundwater, we've looked at surface water, we've looked at the areas surrounding the city, and this seems to be the most feasible way to go about trying to find that secondary source. And it meets the criteria outlined, and it combined with the city's existing or new water source to provide a more robust water supply. The next steps are a feasibility study, preliminary feasibility, fatal flaw, and it's a desktop evaluation. Basically, they're going to sit down, and a bunch of engineers are going to look at this, and geologists are going to look at this more closely, look at the records, work with the OWRD to come up with a plan. They're going to strike things off the list, and they're going to come up with a final feasibility strategy, which is going to be field investigations and drill test holes. To go out and monitor groundwater, to see what kind of flows we have of groundwater in that basalt, to see if it'll justify going further with our testing and drawing water out, and see if that'll meet that 1,000 gallons per minute. Questions regarding the report? I know I attached it to my staff report. Are there any questions regarding that report?
Absolutely.
This is just a summary, quick summary of it, so hopefully you have questions that I can answer.
Existing conditions. The river's cut off tomorrow. How much storage capacity? We cut off all our industrial users if we have any still. How much storage have we got? How long can we last with what we can store?
If the river's cut off tomorrow, we've got 5 million gallon tank up on Pine Street. Hopefully we've got it filled. That'll last. If we put rationing, that could last 8-9 days maybe.
How about Schedule M?
Well, that's empty. There's nothing in that.
We don't have anything in that.
No, that would be the 5 million gallon tank. And that's if we filled it up the night before something happened in the river.
No, I got it. That's fine. Just, okay. All right.
I did want to point out, I missed it, I actually saw it in the report, that we do have a cross connection, an intertie with the City of Salem. But again, the City of Salem is on the same water source, the North Sandy Am River. This last summer, we had the algae bloom. That was the big scare, algae bloom. And what the City of Salem has done is to help treat their water, they've added an abundant supply of chlorine to that water. So we wouldn't be allowed to use that water in the summertime anyway, because there's too much chlorine in the water. We'd burn our citizens' mouths, and it'd be a bad thing. So we can't even use the intertie in the summer months because of the additional chlorine that the City of Salem is putting in.
Too much contact time.
Not enough contact time.
Not enough contact time. Well,
you're almost right there.
Had to be one or the other, though, didn't it? Okay.
Exactly. So that's an issue. This is our sole source, is the North Sandy Am River. We're completely dependent on that water source. When I first got here, I recall having a drought. We came very close to having to put our citizens on water rationings. And the other thing we have is we are really low on the scale of if there is a water rationing, if there is a severe drought, we're really far down on the list of drawing water out. I mean, it's senior rights dependent. First they go with the fish. Biologists say fish need so much water coming down this river. And then after that, it's based on rights of water rights, and they go back to the most seniority. The way it stands now, between the City of Salem and the Sandy Am Water Control District, we have about 2 CFS coming to us, and that's if we have a lot of water coming down the river. I don't know the exact number, but I have it in my office. We have virtually no water coming to us if we entered this kind of drought situations.
Lance, and maybe I don't understand this correctly, and that's real possible, but I understood that the state was reassigning those water rights, throwing all that into a mix and then pulling stuff out of the hat.
Well, the state's working on that, and what you're talking about, I believe, is a pool. They're talking about the reservoir at Detroit, okay? Right now, the only one that gets water from the reservoir from Detroit are the fish, the power company, and the water control district. They've got reserves on that water, and only so much. What the feds are doing now is they're trying to reassign that to allow other municipalities and other property owners and to put reservations on that water if there is anything behind the dam. But if you're in severe drought conditions, there's nothing behind the dam that they're going to have, and whatever water they do release, there's got rights on them, and they've got priority. So if they limit the water out here to 1,000 CFS going down the river, 500 CFS needs to go to the fish right off the top. The other 400 divvied up between the city of Salem and the San Diego Water Control District. And I think we have, like, again, we got like 2.5 CFS, which doesn't do a whole lot for us.
Okay.
Anyway,
all right, that's
going on. I just wanted to explain that a little further.
Okay. Well,
any other questions?
We have questions, and we have council deliberation, and we have a council decision on this one. So, what's
Mr. Mayor,
next?
public comment.
You got a question?
No public comment.
Public comments, then. Staff is befuddled, or not staff, but the council is befuddled by all this information, and so public comments. We're going to go to a decision here pretty quick. But there will be a number of questions and follow-ups and follow-ups. So we'll anticipate that. Anything? Okay. Questions from council or council deliberation?
Mr. Mayor.
Question and follow-up and follow-up. Go ahead, please.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for allowing me my right to speak at the dais.
And on.
Yeah. Anyway, I just want to say that I'm really glad that we're attacking this issue because I remember the scare that we had with the algae blooms. And so the fact that our city has been able to come up with this plan is awesome. Lance, you have had a lot of things coming at you when it comes to issues with Public Works, and here we are with another awesome proposal of what we can do to fix this. And so I had no idea there were even all of these options that we could have when we were looking for a secondary water source. My mind went to well or funnel it in from another city. So this is really neat that we do have other options. So thank you for this report and for working on this problem that we did identify needed to be fixed.
Okay. All right.
Are we ready to move on, Mr. Mayor?
You need a statement of support once in a while, don't you?
The resolution, the issue before the City Council is adoption of this resolution supporting the submittal of this application. The recommendation from our staff is to adopt Resolution 996 as presented. And you have your options: approve resolution as presented, adopt the resolution with modifications, or choose not to submit an application at all.
Okay. What would you folks like to do?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'd like to move that we approve the resolution as presented, resolution number 996, to support submitting an application for a water project feasibility study grant.
Okay.
Seconded.
And a second, thank you. Any discussion of the motion? If not, Alyssa, would you poll the council on this one, please?
Sure. Councilor Ort?
Yes.
Councilor Patty?
Yes.
Councilor Mullen?
Yes.
Councilor Hook?
Yes.
Motion passes 4-0.
4-0. Resolution's passed, and we'll go ahead and apply for that.
Thank you.
Apply for a feasibility study.
Thank you.
Next thing, a Mill Creek Park update, grant writing services contract. Again, Lance.
Yeah, this is really just an update to let you guys know where we're at with the Mill Creek Park. Let me get to that, please. As you know, several years ago we purchased the land known as the Putney property. And the purpose of purchasing that was for a regional park, which was called out in our Parks Master Plan. All along, we've had the intentions of going for an OPRD large fund grant. Last year, we ran out of time. This year, we have the time to do it. So, bear with me. I'm trying to get to the report here. Thank you. We went out with a request for proposal for a grant writer, and it was advertised in the Daily Journal of Commerce on September 30th. We received one proposal back, and that was from the Grassroots Northwest in the amount of $10,000. The city plans to award that contract to Grassroots Northwest. And the second page, you can see this person's proposal as well as the amount of success they've had with numerous clients over the last, I don't know, 15, 20 years. And he's had success getting parks grants from the OPRD. So we are going to move forward with that contract with this person and start the grant writing process so we can have it ready to go by submittal time of April 1st, 2020. And that is where we are with that project, and I'll be happy to answer any questions from you. This is not something that you really need to vote on. It's more of an informational update.
Thank you. Questions for Lance on this one? They do have a pretty extensive list of clients. Yeah. Looking good. Okay. Anything for Lance on this one, folks? Public comment. Okay, let's go on then. And thank you, Lance, on that one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next one is resolution number 997, amending the 2019 or 2020 fees and charges to include fees for sidewalk vendors. Mr. Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you is resolution 997, which is amending the 2019-2020 fees and charges to include fees for sidewalk vendors. Just as a reminder, on October 7th, the City Council adopted ordinance number 1038, which enacted a requirement for businesses wishing to operate in the public right-of-way to obtain a city-issued permit, and required a fee for such permit to be established by resolution. Before you is said resolution. City staff did research, reached out to other communities, put information on the listserv. The recommendation before you is for anyone wishing to have a sidewalk vendor license to pay a fee of $2.50 per square foot, and anyone in violation to be have a potential fine of up to $500 a day. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Anything?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead.
When would the, when would the violation period start, Keith?
Really what we'd want is an opportunity for people to come into compliance and to work with them. I would say the fine would definitely be something that would be a last effort after the attempt. Well, you want something in place so that we can do that. A previous ordinance looked about confiscation. We don't want to get into any of that. We just want for people to be in compliance with the code.
Okay.
Okay. Other questions or thoughts on that one? Well, what does that take? That needs a council decision. So, is there any public comment on that one? No? Yes. Russ?
Russ Strohmeyer, 319 West Washington. Again, not really a big deal, but since I didn't have a copy of that proposal, they pay that fee on what's the time limit? I mean, is it?
It's an annual fee.
Annual fee. Okay, that was just the question I had. Thank you.
$2.50 per square foot. Okay.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
And Keith, that's based on how much space they want to use?
Correct. We looked at different cities and charges, and we felt like that was the best way to do it. I mean, the public right-of-way has a value, so it's just assigning a value of what they want to use, $2.50 a square foot.
And this is for things like sidewalk cafes and for merchandise. People want to put out their merchandise on the sidewalk.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Could we get be ready for a council decision on this one?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Yes?
I move that we adopt resolution number 997 as presented.
Okay.
I'll second.
All right, a motion and a second to approve resolution number 997, amending the 2019-20 fees and charges to include fees for sidewalk vendors. Any discussion? Okay. Alyssa, one more time, please.
Counselor Hook?
Yes.
Counselor Ort?
Yes.
Counselor Mullen?
Yes.
Counselor Patty?
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes 4-0.
4-0. Good. Thank you, folks. Next, and almost the last, resolution number 998, initiating vacation of an alleyway. Mr. Fleischman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. So this is the third of 3 resolutions staff's putting before you this evening. If adopted, Resolution 998 would initiate the process to vacate an alley. This alleyway is located between North 2nd Ave and North 3rd Ave and runs north from East Hollister Street for a distance of 50 feet. The remainder of the alley was vacated in 2017 at the application of a property owner in mid-block. Under state law, when a property owner applies to the local government to vacate a public right-of-way, they must attach to their application the signatures of consent of all property owners adjacent to that right-of-way. And in this case, there was one property owner who did not offer their signature of consent. They never replied to any of the repeated requests to sign. They didn't say no. They just never said yes and never acknowledged that they were being asked to do anything. So the result at that time was to vacate all of the alley except for the alley adjacent to that property owner's property. In your packet, you see a handwritten letter from the owner across the alley from that owner asking the city to vacate the rest of the alley. Because the other owner still will not sign, the Etzels and other owners of 1319 North 3rd Ave cannot apply to the city to vacate it, but the city council may initiate the process on your own and sort of get around the lack of response from the owner at the corner of 2nd and East Hollister. So that's what this resolution does. If enacted, the next step would be to send out notice to the property owners, notice in the paper, etc., schedule a public hearing before the Planning Commission, and then following their Planning Commission, it would return to you for your public hearing and presentation of an ordinance to vacate the last 50 feet of this alley. There are no publicly owned utilities in the alley. There are no private franchise utilities in the alley. You can see from the photograph in the staff report, the alley is maintained as lawn today. I guess you could drive up there if you wanted to, but it's not used as part of the city's transportation system. So with that, the recommendation from staff, as well as the Planning Commission's recommendation, is to initiate vacation of the alley and approve Resolution 998.
Okay, thank you. Now, Dan, we're not in a strict public hearing land use decision process here, are we?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, good. How about public comment on this? Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this? Yes, please. Tell us who you are and where you live, please.
Joyce Goen Patty, 1212 East Pine Street. So the part that's going to be vacated is the homeowner who took over the first part of it. Is she eligible to then absorb that piece? Is that what we're talking about? Or since the other owner is not interested in that part of the alley?
when under Oregon law, when an alley or street is vacated, ownership of the right-of-way, the right-of-way then is split in half, and the owners of the land adjacent on either side become the owners of the land that was in the right-of-way.
But you're saying that
the
the
individual
Third Street owner does not want it?
The Third Street owner is the individual or the group of individuals that requested that the city do something, and the letter is.
So they do want.
It's not a matter that they want it or don't want it. They don't want the alley there anymore. And the Second Street owner is completely non-responsive. Has not said, my understanding is, they have not said no. They have not, but they have also, back in 2 years ago, did not say yes. They never replied. They never responded to the requests to sign the form.
Okay, gotcha.
It is a rental property with an out-of-town owner. Lives all the way in Sublimity.
Far away.
Another absentee property owner, yeah. Okay. Anything else? Council deliberation on this one?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, please.
I feel like for this one, there's so many hearings that will happen that there's still plenty of time for this property owner to respond. So I feel comfortable moving forward with this.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Let's go to a decision then, please. Somebody.
Mr. Mayor?
Go ahead, please.
I move to approve resolution number 998 to initiate the vacation of the alley between North 2nd Avenue and North 3rd Avenue running north from East Hollister Street.
Okay. Good. Is there a second, please?
I second.
Second, okay. A motion and a second. For option 1 to approve the resolution as presented, it's resolution number 998, initiating the vacation of an alley between North 2nd and North 3rd Avenue, running north from East Hollister Street. Okay. Is there any more discussion on this one? Let's go to a vote then, please. Alyssa, one more, I keep saying that, but one more time. I think we're done with it tonight.
Okay. Councillor Mullen?
Yes.
Councillor Patty?
Yes.
Councillor Hook?
Yes.
Councillor Ort?
Yes.
Motion passed 4-0.
Okay, so Dan, remind me at least, once again, what's the next move? This goes to the Planning Commission?
The next move will be a public hearing before the Planning Commission. At this point, I think we'll probably get this on the December 9th meeting of the Planning Commission.
Okay.
Which means that it could be before you, at one of your January meetings.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right. Okay, communication from mayor and councilors. One thing from me, Dan, would you look and see if we've got at least, what, one, maybe two Planning Commission members whose terms are up December, end of December of this year?
The Administrative Services Manager notified me today that there are 2 members of the Planning Commission whose terms are up at the end of December, and I have asked them to let you know whether they wish to be reappointed.
Got that. How about Parks and Recreation Committee?
We are down 2 currently, and we have 2 that are going to be expiring their terms, so that'll be down 4 if they don't re-up.
So we need some names there. Okay.
I believe the Administrative Services Manager just posted that today on our Facebook page.
Okay, good. On the ball, that's good. The other thing, I've noted that one sort of area elected office and one county elected office are up for grabs this next this next year. And, you know, you're only as old as you feel, and with a small windfall from the lottery, and having lots of friends in Lynn County and lots of friends in Marion County, I may have to run for one of these offices. If I were a Republican, I'd have a better chance, but one has to stay loyal to their ideals, whatever they are. So that's all I've got tonight, but how about you folks?
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah.
I would just like us to recognize that everyone at the meeting does have to follow the same decorum as the council members do. That's part of our council rules. And I am feeling like we need to pay a little bit more attention to decorum while we're at the dais. It is perfectly okay for councilors to ask questions and to make comments, to make things more clear to the citizens that elected them. So I would appreciate it if going forward we were able to ask our questions without the extra comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I want to thank Councilor Patty for joining me for a chat with the counselor. I'm sorry you weren't able to make it, but we need to set up a December and January date for a chat with counselors. And thank you, Steve Poisson in the audience, and another member of the community for coming out and chatting with us. And this is an opportunity for citizens to come and just hang out and get to know us and ask questions, and we welcome that. You can also email any of us. We're pretty accessible. I feel like I can say that for the rest of us. But be looking out for those other dates for opportunities to come and speak to the council. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, good. Anything else from councilors? City staff? Anything?
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor.
Future agenda items are the Jordan Bridge update, emergency management equipment update, city properties, and with that, what time is it, Chris? 8:51. Oh, almost 2 hours. That's enough for tonight. Thank you, folks.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah. He was going to talk about a couple things.
No, I've been swamped. It's probably not his fault.
I'm sorry. Oh, I saw that. The surface meeting over at the library. Yeah.